Hey guys, welcome back to the Banter Bets and BPL podcast. Just going to do a quick run through looking back at game week 7. Game week 7, and looking ahead to game week 8 in terms of Fantasy Premier League. We'll do it nice and quick. We had a long podcast last night, so here we go. Palace lost 2-0 at Wolves. Wolves looked a little better than they did last time out against Newcastle. Looked like they could actually create a little bit more chances. Yeah, it's the same kind of stuff with Wolves. Everyone on the outside is worth owning. Their two center mids probably aren't. But Ait Nouri made his breakthrough, playing left wing back, getting up, attacking, just like the Wolves wing backs always do. So he looks to have value if he can keep that spot. There is going to be competition for that place, especially when Johnny comes back. They signed Marcal. They've got Ait Nouri. They're playing Saiz there sometimes, so I'm not 100% sure he keeps his spot, but you're obviously wanting to own him right now to see if he does, and if he does keep attacking, then he'll have some real good value. I'd still probably prefer to own Semedo just due to job security in terms of their fullbacks, but they're both definitely worth owning in the Doherty Johnny fantasy roles. In terms of their forwards, Pedence and Neto look good. They combined for a goal. Jimenez held off the score sheet, but obviously Jimenez is a forward one on your fantasy team who's going to be really solid. And it looks like Pedence and Neto have their spots kind of locked in. It doesn't look like they're going to be playing Adama Traore too much. So Pedence and Neto, especially Pedence, has looked really, really fun to own. So yeah, those guys are looking good. Their back three of Kilman, Boley, and Cody, obviously worth owning because Wolves are a good team. And as we see here, they keep clean sheets. So that's fantastic for them. On the Palace side, Palace are kind of boring. Zaha's the only player on that team that you really love to own. And even like Zaha has not always been a good fantasy player. He's kind of been a little bit more flash than end product, but he's actually kind of scoring some goals this year. So he's the one you like to own. Batshuayi's been starting. You guys know my thoughts on Batshuayi Ayew. I think they're going to go back to Ayew soon. He's been ill for a little while, so you don't really know what's going on with him. But I do think that Batshuayi hasn't really torn it up since being given a couple starts, and I still think Ayew's their guy. I think you own either both of them as a forward three right now, and hope your guy runs away with the job. I think Ayew's got a little bit higher upside, as seen last season. Moving on. Sheffield, Man City. Not much on this game. Sheffield's had some really tough fixtures, and I've always thought they've played pretty well. And I always think that they look like they're going to score. They're playing good stuff. They keep the ball well, and then they get into the opposition box, and it kind of falls apart because they got no goal scorers, right? I'd still obviously hold on to their forwards that are playing, Brewster and McBurney. But you don't. It doesn't seem like rotation's far away when they're never scoring, right? So maybe it's a buy low window on one of those two forwards to see if you can, I don't know, shed something not as valuable for them, or maybe a forward who doesn't always start, maybe popped up with a goal lately, or I don't know, a midfielder that's hot, maybe try and get one of their forwards because forwards are obviously valuable. It's nice for Kyle Walker that he scored. Doesn't usually score, but he is obviously a very dependable as far as Man City defenders go because he's always going to play. And I think they've actually found their best back line now. I think it is Walker, Diaz, Laporte, and looks like Cancelo playing left back. We'll see what happens when Mendy comes back, but I'd have never liked Mendy as a defender. I think Cancelo is the one that you want to keep there. So hopefully that's kind of how it is going forward, and we can actually see some consistency from the City back line. Although just be aware that Pep, he'll throw in Ake for a game, he'll throw in Garcia, he'll probably throw in Mendy, maybe even a Zinchenko, something like that. But those four that I mentioned earlier, I think are kind of locked in as the go-to back line. KDB is back, being that midfielder one. I know only one assist this game, but he's going to be a first-round player moving forward, and he's the guy you drafted to lead your midfield as a midfielder one. So he's finally back playing. I would not be worrying too much about him. Nice to have him back if you spent a first-round pick on him. Ferran Torres has been starting. That's a positive for Torres owners, if there is any out there. He might be a pickup if you're looking to see if he keeps on starting. He's been scoring more in the Champions League than the Prem. But if he's starting as a forward on Man City, then he's obviously worth owning. Don't know how long that'll last, but you're obviously going to ride him while he's hot, right? The other note I had for Man City is looks like Bernardo's been playing regularly. Hasn't really been contributing in fantasy, but he definitely has the potential to. So I think he's a hold. Not super high expectations, but he kind of had a period where he was out of the team there and was kind of coming off the bench, and he wasn't really worth owning. If he's playing regularly, I think he is worth owning, as are obviously Sterling and Mahrez. Chelsea 3-0 Burnley. Speaking of best Chelsea backlines, I think this is their best backline. They got Zuma, who's a goal-scoring machine now, apparently. Thiago Silva, that partnership looks solid. That looks like it's going to be the partnership moving forward. Obviously, Chilwell's good. Obviously, Reece James is got a little bit of competition with Azpilicueta. I'd prefer to own James, but it looks like that's going to be their backline, and they've kept a bunch of clean sheets in a row. So hopefully, there's finally some stability with them. Mendy has obviously helped with that in net. Hakim Ziyech made his little breakout. He's obviously a good player, and it was a bit of a matter of time before this happened, but it looks like he's playing now. Pulisic has been hurt, so it looks like Ziyech's going to get the bulk of the run going forward. Well, for maybe not going forward, but right now, looks like he's one of the first names on the attacking team sheet with a couple of their injuries. Looks like it'll be him, Werner. Havertz is also out with COVID now. So, yeah, expect to see a lot of Ziyech, Werner, Mount, just because their options are a little limited. So that's good for the patient Ziyech owners. The Pulisic injury sucks because he's really good, and he's fun to watch. And if you're a Pulisic owner, it's just gone from bad to worse, and that he hasn't been playing much this year at all. I would obviously stick to him. You're not going to drop him for probably garbage on the waiver wire anyway. But it just kind of sucks that you invested an early round pick on a guy who has not done anything yet through no fault of his own performance, just injuries and kind of competition for place a little bit. Werner's the forward you want to own on Chelsea. He's really nice. He's their penalty taker now. He's going to be forward one moving forward, so you can lock that in and ride him to hopefully a good fantasy finish. West Ham 1-2 Liverpool. What do we got here? So Fornals scores. Beat me in fantasy this week because I'm playing the guy with Fornals, or last week. And Fornals scores and does play well, and that's kind of bad news for Benrahma. I know he transferred in and we had kind of high hopes for him, but it doesn't look like, certainly I really don't think David Moyes is going to drop Fornals or Bowen right now. He loves both those guys, and that would be the two players that Benrahma would probably come in for. Now, having said that, maybe he drops Hilaire, who looks really bad, and plays Benrahma up top or Bowen up top a little bit, something like that. I could even see Yarmolenko coming in and playing up top. If you want to make a bold pickup this week, I think Yarmolenko is a good shout, because I think maybe he plays up top since Hilaire is useless. I'd still hold Benrahma just for the hope that he starts playing, and he could be exciting, but kind of sucks that you don't really see a way into the team for him, especially if Antonio comes back somewhat soon. Hopefully it's not out for long, because that guy is their most influential player for sure. On the Liverpool side, I mean, same old. Well, not same old with the front three. With the front two, I mean, Salah and Mane, but it's not same old with Firmino, because he might be being phased out and replaced by Jota here. And Jota is, if he starts and he's playing regularly, that is huge for Jota owners. That could be a league winner, because that's like an elite player that you've probably drafted really late or picked up on waivers, that all of a sudden, if he's playing in a front three with Salah and Mane, he's going to be an elite fantasy option, a midfielder two. Maybe, I wouldn't say midfielder one. He's not really in the top tier, but if he's playing with those guys, then why not, right? He's going to be scoring maybe just as much as them. Or getting as many opportunities to score as them, playing in that front three. And in fantasy, it has always been about opportunity, or very much about opportunity, and he looks like he's got a golden opportunity to be a fantasy stud. As far as the Liverpool defense is concerned, I think you roster Gomez. Obviously, the two fullbacks are amazing. Their center backs, I don't know if Matip's worth owning right now. He hasn't been playing. We thought he was going to be. That Phillips kid has been playing. I don't think he's really a solid option. Maybe you stream him for a week, but they're playing Man City this weekend anyway. So I think, trying to find value in those players, in like the Liverpool center backs right now, is going to be tough outside of Gomez, who seems kind of a lock to be playing for right now. Move on to Villa 3, Saints 4. What a high scoring game. It wasn't really an entertaining game because it was 4-0 Southampton, and then 3 kind of late, ultimately irrelevant Villa goals. But good for fantasy because Jack Grealish was back at it. Watkins was back at it scoring, and those are the 2 guys for Villa that are worth owning. If you want to roster Barkley or McGinn, sure. I don't think they're super strong options. They're midfielder 5s. But I think Villa is kind of just another team, guys. They're not going to be challenging for the title again. They're going to have some good fantasy players in Grealish and Watkins, but it's not like this is a team that you're rostering all their defenders on because they're going to be the next Sheffield or Wolves, a team that's going to be actually worth depending on for clean sheets. No. On the other hand, Southampton maybe could be that team. If you want to be rostering their defenders, I would say Bertrand would be the first one just because he's the most attacking. I know Vestergaard scored here. I don't think he'll do it often. But maybe Southampton is a top half team, and this is the team that I want to find that midfielder on. I think it's going to be Walcott. I know that's crazy and Walcott's old, but I really do think he's going to look at comfortable in this attack. They're missing Danny Ings right now, kind of buried the lead with that one. Yeah, Ings is out for like 6 weeks, which is awful, but someone's got to step up, and Walcott's got a bit of goal scoring pedigree. I've always been a bit of a Walcott guy for fantasy, not necessarily real life, but I think he can contribute in fantasy. I think this is the week he scores coming up. So make sure Walcott is rostered in your league. That would be my little tip. Ward-Prowse is on fire. I think it's more of a flash in the pan. He's not going to be scoring free kicks every week, and I've never been a guy to just roster a player because, oh man, he's really good at set pieces. Like he's on all the set pieces because set piece goals don't happen too often. But obviously you're going to roll with Ward-Prowse right now and see what happens. I don't anticipate him being anything more than a midfielder 5. But if Southampton are good this season, which they definitely kind of look like it, we'll see what happens with Ings out. That could really negatively affect all their fantasy players because less goals means less fantasy contributions, less wins. So that sucks for them. But, Adams, Walcott, Ward-Prowse, these are all guys that you're looking to roster right now. And we'll see if they bring in Shane Long, Obafemi. Maybe that's a sneaky forward pickup since Ings is out right now. Newcastle 2 on Everton. Callum Wilson is great. He seems like he scored every game, these two. Obviously the Maester scored, gets his usual goal. He's looking awesome, but Everton really needs their players back because none of their replacements are good. Guys like Sigurdsson and Iwobi playing, they just look trash. So they really need this. Their last game of the Richarlison suspension that has really hurt them. But they should be getting James back. They won't have Richarlison, obviously, but once they have those guys back, that's the front 3 that you want to roster. None of the other replacements because they're not good enough. And even Everton's back line right now isn't looking fantastic. I've long said Mina's begging to be replaced. I really do think when Holgate comes back, he'll be thrust back into the team. Keane is worth rostering. It looks like he's got a solid spot. Digne's back this week, who's a great left back. Coleman isn't quite back yet, and I don't think you need to be rostering Godfrey or anything like that, because Everton's not in a good round of form right now. So why would you be rostering guys who are ultimately going to be backups on that team? Obviously Wilson is looking like a forward 2, a really good forward 2, maybe even a forward 1 at a pinch. And then St. Maximin is kind of got a bit of the Zaha's in that he's a really exciting player, but you never know if his end product's there. So he might not be as much of a fantasy producer as he is skilled. But he's still worth owning, if nothing else, just for the fun of seeing him take guys on every time he gets the ball and causing some excitement, hoping he'll contribute for your fantasy team. No one really else on Newcastle worth rostering, I don't think. It's kind of a boring team. Speaking of boring teams, Manchester United can't score goals right now. Bruno and Rashford are the guys worth rostering there. Obviously, you got, well, those are the best guys worth rostering. You're obviously going to be rostering Martial, Greenwood, Pogba, which pains me to say because I have hated Pogba's performances all season. I don't know how he doesn't get dropped. But I've been a Van de Beek owner, and I finally gave up on it once I saw how bad Pogba's been playing and that he still doesn't get replaced. I think you got to really move on from Van de Beek. Maybe be quick, have him as a watch list guy in case he starts playing. But I don't know. Ole just doesn't play him, so you can't be having guys that are getting you 1, 0, or 1 points every week. It's just not going to work for you. On the Arsenal side of things, Aubameyang finally scored, got a penalty. Maybe he gets off the mark now. Maybe the buy low window slammed shut. He looks good. They played Willian and Lacazette. Looks like the front three when they need to win games. There might be some rotation. Very rarely you'll see Nketiah, maybe some Pepe. Willock had a big week in the Europa League. I think maybe Joe Willock is a sneaky risky pickup if you're looking for someone that could have a big contribution if he starts playing. They're pretty high on him as a prospect, so there you go. Bellerin, I think, is honestly an elite defender. He gets forward a lot. He plays on a good team. He's got clean sheet potential. He's got assist potential. He's got goal scoring potential. That's basically all you can ask for as a defender. So I really think he's a strong roster. In terms of Man U defenders, and by the way, the rest of those Arsenal defenders that are playing, Tierney, David Luiz, who's been playing, Gabriel has been playing consistently, holding. I guess that's a little too many. I think, what was it, Tierney, Holding, and Gabriel this week? Yeah, those are probably the 3 most ownable in that order. Tierney, Gabriel, and then Holding. The good news for Manchester United defenders is Ole Gunnar Solskjaer is really stubborn and plays the same ones every week. So you know that you're going to get Maguire, Lindelof, Shaw, and Wan-Bissaka. I do not see how Shaw could keep his place now that Telles is coming back from his illness and his isolation, but Shaw will probably at least play 1 more week. And you never know beyond that. So you still want to roster those Manchester United defenders if you've got room for them and they're still playing, right? Spurs 2-1 Brighton. Kane obviously scored his goal. Maybe this is the Bale coming out party. I'm sure he's got to start this game week coming up. It'd be smart management to start him now that he's finally got off the mark and scored. So maybe we start to see that Kane-Bale-Son partnership really start to flourish and be awesome in fantasy. Speaking of awesome in fantasy, Reguilon's got potential just because, kind of like Bellerin, gets forward lots. He's got assist potential. He's got clean sheet potential. That's what you look for. Lamptey gets his goal. That's awesome. Tariq Lamptey's really fun to own. Speaking of getting forward, doesn't have the clean sheet potential of a big team, but if you're going to roster a defender for the rest of the season on a not top 6 team, then I think he's one of the better ones to do it. Or we'll say not on a not top 8 team, because there is rosterable defenders on the left. Here's the Wolves, teams like that. The other only note that we had for this, actually 2 more notes, is where was Neil Mopai? He is their best forward by far, and he was left out of the squad. Wasn't ill, wasn't hurt apparently, wasn't even on the bench though. So you'd think he's gotta come back soon. If he doesn't play this week, I'd start to be worried as a Mopai owner, but he's got to come back. He's their best player, and well, maybe not their best player, but their best goal scoring option. So surely he'll be back soon. I wouldn't panic yet if I'm a Brighton owner. The other note was Matt Ryan got dropped for this Robert Sanchez guy, who I guess had an all right game. If you've got a backup goalie on your bench that isn't starting, maybe you drop him for the Sanchez guy just to see if he keeps a run of games or gets a run of games going. I don't think they'll do that. I think they've probably going to go back to Matt Ryan, but these are the risks you take, and it's not even really a risk if you're dropping a goalie who already doesn't play, just to maybe you've got a second starting goalie on your hands here. Fulham, West Brom, man, West Brom are in trouble if they're losing handily to Fulham like this, not even putting up a fight, not even scoring a goal. Disappointing from West Brom. So that means that their three that were worth owning in the first place, Grant, Pereira, and Diangana, who are already low-end guys to begin with. If you can't be scoring against Fulham, then you're an even lower-end guy. You're obviously rostering Grant and Pereira just because, well, Grant because he's a forward. Forwards are hard to find that play regularly. And Pereira because he's really skilled, but it's just such a dire team that you don't really want to be pinning your fantasy hopes on anyone on West Brom. In terms of Fulham, Bobby Reid scored. I don't see him scoring very much, but he's not a horrible forward option just because the lack of depth among forwards in fantasy. So if you want to roster him and see if he can do it again, that's great. They do play West Ham, and West Ham's prone to conceding goals against bad teams. So maybe he contribute again, but he's not a guy you want to pin your season on. Mitrovic has started a little slow. He's not quite as good as he started slow in terms of goals. Obviously got a couple assists, and he's not really looked as dangerous as I remember him looking a couple seasons ago. But he's still probably on the forward 2, forward 3 borderline. If he's a forward 3 on your team, you're really strong. If he's a forward 2, you're still looking fine. So I think he's one of the few players in this game that kind of you want to roster and probably want to roster the whole season for in terms of fantasy. Finally, Leicester Leeds. Leicester are flying. Few big wins. They've beaten Man City this season. Away at Leeds is a good win, I think. Away at Arsenal. Vardy, Barnes, Tielemans. Look at those goal scorers. Vardy 2 assists. Those 3 are the guys that are going to be really, really good fantasy players for this team. Tielemans is kind of in and out, but he's worth owning for he does have these big games. Outside of that, I think Under, who got an assist in this game, and he played well in the Europa League midweek too. He could possibly emerge as another midfielder worth owning. Got a bit of pedigree coming over from Roma. So maybe he's a cheeky midfielder 5 that you're stashing a little bit right now and seeing if he gets more regular playing time, he could contribute a little more. Obviously, the Leicester defenders are valuable. They've got Fofana back there. They've got this Luke Thomas guy that's playing. I don't know how long that'll last. And obviously Albrighton played right wing back this week. And James Justin kind of slid into center back, which I think is a really, really good sign for his value, because the talk has always been, oh man, as soon as Pereira comes back and Castagna comes back, James Justin's out of the team. But now that Sayuncu's out for a long time, if Leicester keeps playing that back 5, or I guess back 3 with 2 wing backs, they could play all 3 of Castagna, Justin, and Pereira. And obviously it kind of sucks for Justin if he's the center back. But if he's still playing on a team like Leicester that have clean sheet potential, then I think that's good for his value, because it's not necessarily, when Pereira comes back in, Justin's going to be on the bench never playing. No, he might just slide in at center back instead. On the Leeds side, I'm still really liking Leeds as a team. They still played their football in this game. Got picked off a bit on the counter, but I still like them as a top half team and a team with clean sheet potential and goal scoring potential. So there's definitely some fantasy relevant players on this team. We'll start with obviously the chosen one, Patrick Bamford. You love him as your forward 2, maybe even on the forward 1 borderline, although that might be pushing it a bit. Notable returnees this game are Liam Cooper and Pablo Hernandez. Pablo was kind of their string puller last year in the championship, and I know he's a little old. He's been hurt at the start of the season, but if he's playing consistently and in a good attack, then I think he's worth owning. I picked him up this week just to see if he plays again. Obviously Harrison and Costa on the wings are worth owning. I know they signed that Rafinha guy, but it looks like they're going to roll with Harrison and Costa, and I don't really blame them. They've been playing really well. I also think the Leeds defenders could have value, particularly Dallas, who scored this game, and Ayling, because they get forward and contribute to that attack. And I think this is going to be a good team, so I think you could do worse than rostering any of the 4 Leeds defenders, Cooper and Koch as well as the 2 fullbacks. All right, guys, that is it for that. Be active on that waiver wire. Go grab your guys. Good luck in fantasy this weekend, and we'll see you guys next week.